So there are rumors going around that Trump suddenly wants to pardon Derek Chauvin. And now I've seen 2 or 3 podcasters that are talking about this, and they also don't have any like video of Trump saying this or any real sources, but they see that Democrats fear that that Trump's going to pardon Chauvin, maybe based on him pardoning January 6th guys and other high-profile people. I don't know what they're basing it on, right? But that's the rumor, according to some. I have not seen any video of Trump saying that. I have not heard of Trump ever saying that. As a matter of fact, back in March, Trump denied at that point that he was going to pardon Derek Chauvin. He said the administration wasn't looking at it. He said that he saw no reason to get involved in pardoning Derek Chauvin, and nobody was pushing for it. Ben Shapiro made a documentary about it and also has a petition going around that has 50,000 signatures right now, I think, to get Derek Chauvin pardoned. Now, I have to say, I've not seen the documentary, so I don't know what Ben Shapiro's point is, but I do have to do a little mea culpa for my standpoint on the situation, so I'm going to refine that. Guys, it is Thursday. It is the 15th of May. It's 2025. And it's 2:30 p.m. here in Germany. And this is the Insanity Report for today. And so I heard these rumors about pardoning Derek Chauvin. And I was like, yes, that would be great if, and there's some caveats to that, that would be great if it was true, first of all, if Trump was really considering it. And the stories that I heard from the podcasters were like, yeah, okay, they also heard rumors and they're just re-spreading the rumor, I guess you could say. I talked to my buddy K-Mag in Texas about it. He's pretty politically in tune in the States, and I asked him if he heard anything about it. He said no. Trump also denied it back in March at least, and maybe at the beginning of May. He might have denied it as well. And like I said, Shapiro did a documentary about it, and I was in the camp of pardoning him until I heard that pardoning him on the federal level, which is the only way that Trump can do it. Trump can't pardon state charges, state crimes, right? He can only pardon the federal crime. And the problem with that is for Chauvin is that in state prison, he was basically in lockdown 24 hours a day because he had to fear for his life. He was, in a local place. He barely could see his family. He barely had any rec time. He was basically in solitary confinement the whole time. Now, in the federal prison, he's got more space. He is not in solitary confinement the whole time. It's easier for him to see his family. And so for him, the federal prison is better. Now, if Trump pardons him, that means he's going to go back to state prison and still be in prison, right? Pardoning him federally will not get him out of prison. He's just going to go to state prison. Unless the governor pardons him there, which is unlikely, it really doesn't do any good to pardon the guy, even though I felt at the time that he should be pardoned. If there was a way to pardon him both federally and state and get him out of prison by pardoning him, then I would be all for it, because I feel like I felt like he was railroaded. Now, I've kind of changed my opinion on this due to my talk with K-Mag, my buddy, and also looking into it a little bit more. What I thought at the time is that Derek Chauvin used a technique that was taught to him by the police department in order to restrain people. And that was also said in court, and he did use a technique that was taught to him by the police department in training. So I thought, well, if he's using a trained technique and George Floyd is full of fucking fentanyl and meth and has got an enlarged heart and has COVID and all kinds of shit and is in panic mode, apparently, at least he's acting like he's panicked, then I don't think that Chauvin using a learned tactic to subdue or restrain the guy should be grounds for him to go to prison for murder because George Floyd died, right? That seems, and still seems, very, very crazy, right? Now, there is a caveat to this that I was not aware of at the time. It is apparently so that such a technique is warranted up until the time that the person is subdued, right? So Floyd was in handcuffs, laying on the street with Derek Chauvin on his back, right? Now, there is also, there's also an argument between whether it was his knee on his neck or on his shoulder blades. On the video, it looks one way. He says it was another way. It could be either way, but apparently that doesn't matter too much. What matters is that once Floyd was in handcuffs and not struggling, then they should have got him up off the ground, right? Now, granted, he was put in the police cruiser first, and he was the one begging to be pulled out and put on the ground. He yelled he couldn't breathe right from the fucking beginning. And anybody that knows a little bit about, getting arrested, and I do, one of the things that people go to immediately in order to try to, gain some sort of empathy or some, I don't know if they're hoping to get out of it or not, but the I can't breathe thing is a thing that lots of people use once they get put into a patrol car, right? Now, Floyd was known for doing this. He did it every time he got arrested, is what they say, right? Either way, doesn't matter what Floyd wants. What matters is they shouldn't have ever taken him out of the fucking cruiser. They had him secured in the cruiser. Why risk an extra confrontation in order to give him what he wants, right? They could have just left him in the cruiser and probably should have. Then this whole situation probably would have never happened. Floyd would have cried and bitched that he couldn't breathe and he would have hyperventilated. But if he would have died by sitting in the back of a patrol car, that could never have been anybody's fault, right? No cops would have been blamed for that, or couldn't have been blamed for that, right? So that was a mistake, right? A mistake on Chauvin's behalf, Chauvin's part, right? Now, do I think that warrants him to go to prison for murder? No, right? I don't think so. Now, also, the second mistake was staying on his back or keeping him on the ground with his hands cuffed behind his back. He was no longer a threat at that time. And they could have just put him back in the patrol car or sat him up and put him on the curb or whatever. They could have done a number of things besides what Chauvin did, right? Now, still, it's a police-trained tactic, right, to do to do people. Still, Chauvin seemed to be within his rights to use this tactic on Floyd, right? Where his rights apparently stop is at the point that Floyd is handcuffed and subdued. So basically, legally, Floyd was not permitted to continue using this tactic on Floyd at the time he was using it. He should have backed off, right? So technically, I don't think he was planning to murder the guy, right? I don't think he was planning to murder the guy. I think that he basically made the wrong decision, and it led to somebody's death. He was negligent in that position, because basically Floyd is at the mercy of the cops since he's got his hands tied behind his back and he doesn't have a key for the handcuffs. So he is completely at their mercy. He can't do shit, especially if he's laying on his stomach. There's no way he's getting up, right? So he's completely at their mercy. So while I still don't think that there was any racial animus involved, I don't think that Chauvin's intention was to kill Floyd. I think that Chauvin thought this is what Floyd does. He screams bloody murder every time he gets arrested, and I'm not going to fall for it, and fuck that shit. But he still violated the guardrails. He still violated the rules, right? The rules are you can use the technique to subdue somebody. Once they're subdued, you have to stop using that technique. That is what I read over and over again. That's what my buddy K-Mag says. That's what pretty much everybody says, right? Now, that still doesn't mean that Chauvin killed the guy, right? Because there were other mitigating circumstances involved in that whole situation, which is Floyd had COVID, apparently. He had a mega dose of fentanyl in his system. He had meth in his system. So he was pretty high. I've done meth. I know what it's like. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? It was also hot outside. Also didn't help. You know what I mean? So, it could be a very dangerous situation. You know what I mean? He could have gotten shortness of breath either way being on these drugs. Now, I think that both things had something to do with his death. It also says that in the autopsy report. So the drugs and his condition with COVID, I think he also had an enlarged heart. Something was wrong with his heart. All those things, plus Chauvin keeping him on the ground and leaning on him, all contributed to the death, right? So there's no way to know if Floyd would have died if Chauvin wouldn't have done that at the time. And there's also no way to know if Floyd would have died if it would have just been Chauvin keeping him on the ground and there were no drugs, no nothing in his system, he didn't have COVID, no other mitigating circumstances. That being the case, while Chauvin may have been negligent, right, it is not completely his fault and it can't be murder, right? So if there's a way, and I don't know about this legally, so this is where my opinion and my thing is at the moment, right, with this deal. Chauvin violated the training that he was given, right, apparently. I don't think he had the intention to murder the guy. It can't be murder in that case. At best, he can get manslaughter, which he did get, but he got charged with all kinds of shit, right, and he convicted of all kinds. He got convicted of second-degree murder, he got convicted of third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter or something like that. So, don't you think that's a little bit overboard? I think that in any other case, where there's any other case, if it would have been a black cop and a white victim, right, I'm sure that manslaughter would have been the threshold. They would have charged the guy with manslaughter, right? I mean, look at the black cop that killed Ashley Babbitt. He didn't get charged with shit, right? Not even manslaughter, not negligence, not negligent homicide, nothing. This dude just gets to walk, right? So in that case, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. That means to me there are two systems of justice, right? When the victim is black, it's looking bad for you if you're white, right? When the victim is white, you got a pretty good shot if you're black. That's what it looks like. Now, I'm not saying it's like that in every single case and all the time or that the system is built that way. No. What I'm saying is it certainly does look like there is a bias in favor of one or the other. And that was also that bias was done in the Derek Chauvin trial. I don't think Chauvin got a fair trial. I don't think Chauvin should be in prison for 22 and a half years for all these murder charges and shit. But I do think he should be charged with manslaughter or like negligent homicide for breaching his training guidelines and continuing to lean on the dude after he was already in handcuffs and on the floor, on the ground. So, where first I thought, free the guy, he shouldn't be charged with anything, he didn't commit any crimes, he didn't do anything wrong, and now knowing what I know, the most important part of this being the training also was geared towards when the subject is subdued, you must stop this method. That seems pretty clear cut to me. If that's the case, then if that's not the case and anybody has actual proof of that, fucking please tell me, right? If there's a Minneapolis police officer out there that went through the same training as George Floyd or as Derek Chauvin and can show me in a training manual that it says you can use this technique and it doesn't say anything about how long you can use it, whether or not you can continue to use it if the person is handcuffed or not. If it doesn't say any of that shit, right, then I'm wrong here too. I'm wrong again, right? But according to what I read and according to who I asked, it seems like the rule is you can use the method to subdue somebody. Once they're subdued, you have to stop the method, period. That seems to be the case, right? There doesn't seem to be any wiggle room there. If that's true, then Derek Chauvin should be charged with manslaughter or like negligent homicide, certainly not for murder, certainly not with intentional murder, you know what I mean? And certainly not a sentence of 22 and a half years. So if there's a way to give him a new trial based on manslaughter, then okay, right? If there's a way to pardon him, both state and federally, also okay. You know why? Because, again, I feel like the charges that he, and the conviction he got, I feel like the charges and the conviction are wrong. I don't think that that's murder. Even though he violated his training guidelines, it still can't be murder because there were other factors involved in the death of George Floyd, the drugs and his condition, right? So considering that, it just can't be murder in my opinion, right? Again, in my opinion. Now, obviously, legally, they were able to do it, right? But also, a black cop legally shot Ashley Babbitt to death, and he was also able to do it. So, you know what I mean? It's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong here. What I'm trying to say, my only reverse on this case, on this deal with Chauvin is, I think that he should be pardoned, but still charged with manslaughter, and then given a trial based on that, or negligent homicide, if that's the thing. I think it is. Then, and if he can't be retried after he's pardoned on another crime, so in this case manslaughter, then I still think he should be pardoned because the first trial was based on charges that are not applicable to his situation, right? So it's a tough one. I've changed my mind on the situation in the sense that he obviously deserves some punishment for violating his training guidelines. I didn't know that before. Now I know. However, I think the murder charges were excessive. I think that him being white and Floyd being black and there being tens of thousands of BLM protesters ripping down the country and standing in front of the courthouse, I think that there was jury intimidation during that case. You know what I mean? Because if protesters are allowed to see the jury walk in and walk out, yell at them and scream at them, that's jury intimidation. I'm sorry. I think those people made a decision based on their own well-being rather than the well-being of Derek Chauvin or the fairness to Derek Chauvin. And so I think all those things played a role. And so I think that therefore Derek Chauvin should be pardoned both state and federally. But if there is then a way to charge him with manslaughter and let him go on trial for that, then do it. And if there's not a way to do that, then still pardon him. That's my position. And it sounds tricky, but you know, that is my position on it. So now that I know more of the facts on the situation on his training, on that part I'm wrong. So when I said before he is totally innocent and blah, 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 that's not true. He's not totally innocent. But the end result is still the same for me. I think that these charges are way too high. I think his prison sentence is way too high. And I think that he was judged not based just on the merits and the facts, but on other things that have nothing to do with the trial, like the BLM protesters, like the jury members seeing those people outside the courthouse every day. I think that has a massive influence on how a trial comes out. I mean, look, they also let O.J. Simpson go, right? They said he wasn't guilty, even though it's fucking like clear to everybody on the planet these days. Like, there's not one person I know that he even wrote a book about it. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Everybody seems to think O.J. Simpson's guilty. The jury didn't think so. And that was also right after Rodney King, right? Right after the Rodney King beating by the cops, that O.J. Simpson shit happened. And there also, the same thing is, well, fucking hell. After watching a black man get beat half to death by a bunch of white cops and them getting off, right? Because they also got off. That's why the riots happened, right? Them getting off. How can we convict a black superstar? No. So that all influences people, right? All those things influence people. I think there was a lot of influence involved in Derek Chauvin's trial. And I think that's not really fair. I don't think there's a way to avoid it. But then at the very least, he should get charged for the crime he actually committed and not a crime he didn't commit. Derek Chauvin didn't commit murder, right? At the most, it could be negligent homicide or manslaughter, in my opinion. And just because they can legally twist it into murder, I don't care about that. You're right? I don't care about that. I do think he should be pardoned, but I don't think Trump's going to do that. I haven't heard Trump say he's going to do it. I've only heard messages to the contrary. So that's where we're at. That's basically not even really news for you guys. It's just me saying, okay, I got something wrong there. But still, the outcome is pretty much the same. That's pretty much where I'm at. All right, guys. See you guys tomorrow on the next Insanity Report. It's going to be the end of the week. Finally Friday. I'll be glad to get home. I haven't been home all week. So you guys enjoy today. And tomorrow we'll see you back here.